Hello, I'm Charlize and this is Peanut, and today we are going to be talking about my favourite books that I read in 2021. So this is always an exciting time of year because I just look forward to watching everyone's favourite book videos, and then that basically just becomes my TBR for the following year. I've never read so many books in my life. I read 144 books this year. Most of those were on audiobook. I'd say like 90% of those I listened to on audiobook because I drive a lot for work. So that definitely helped. But I think my previous maximum was like somewhere between 50 and 70. So like big difference this year. I find it quite hard to get through physical books, so audiobooks are the way to go for me. So I actually think every single one of the books on this list I listen to on audiobook. So that's just a little disclaimer. All of these books exist in audiobook format. I think that all books should, but hey, that's just me. I feel like Peanut needs to be introduced. So Peanut is my little rescue house chicken. I have many rescue chickens. I have 9 outside, and then Peanut is permanently inside pretty much because she has one leg. Would you like to show everyone? Would you like to demonstrate? Demonstrate. She just has one leg. So she is my best friend, even though she likes to peck me sometimes when I annoy her. She's my best friend, and so she's joining me in my video filming. She usually sits right here on the couch while we're watching TV. So I have tried to rank these books very loosely. It's very much like, is this accurate? Like, I'm pretty sure my number one book is Yes. Definitely my favorite, but other than that, it's all a bit like, I don't know. So I've got 15 fiction books and 5 non-fiction books, and I thought I may as well just put the non-fiction books in this video, so I'll do those at the end. And the non-fiction books are in no particular order. I like seriously could not pick out of the non-fiction books. And if I had to pick an actual favourite book out of both categories, it would probably be one of the non-fiction books. I read just some amazing non-fiction books this year. So I'm going to start from number 15 on the fiction pile and go up to number 1. But as I said, the order is like not really, like these are all amazing 5-star books that I loved almost equally. But I tried to put them in some sort of order. So number 15 on my list is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. I'm sure you all know about this book. It's a children's classic that I never read. This is the first time that I've read it, and it was amazing. And I think it was free on Audible. I think that Audible added like lots of classics for free. So I think this one was free and it was great. It's just like so warm, and like I just love Anne. Like it's just so cozy, and it's amazing. If you haven't read Anne of Green Gables, do it. And I think there's like 6 books in the series, so I've read the second one, also loved it, not as much as the first one, but I'm going to continue with the series as well. My 14th favourite book of the year was Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I think I read this way back in the beginning of the year because it feels like I read it the year before. It feels like I read it in 2020, but I must have read it at the very start of the year. And this is this the only YA on the list? It might be actually. Yeah, I think it might be. So this book follows our main character Frances, who is a student, and basically she spends all of her time studying for her final exams, and just kind of has lots of thoughts about her worth outside of her grades, and like what if she doesn't get good grades, all that kind of stuff. And then we've got our other main character Aled, who is a fan fiction author, and Frances reads and is a massive fan of this fan fiction, but Aled isn't publicly known as the author, and they basically end up intertwining and become friends. And it's just like the fan fiction and then just the struggles of late high school and university or college. This book just really like spoke to me. I really wish that I read this in year 11 or 12. I think that it would have helped me so much, and just I would have related to it so much. I still do relate to it so much, but I'm no longer studying. I've gone through university. But if you are currently in high school or university or college or whatever, highly recommend this. And if you're not, still read it. It's amazing. Number 13 is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This is, I think, a modern classic technically, and it is the first ever science fiction to be published by a black woman. And that's just wild considering like when this came out. When did it come out? It came out in 1979. So this book is set in 1976, and a main character, Dana, randomly just time travels back in time to 1815, where she is just assumed to be a slave. So obviously our main character is black, and yeah, so she basically just randomly time travels back to that period of time, and she doesn't know why, and then she goes back to the normal modern time. So it's a time travel thing, but it's not like a confusing kind of time travel. It's really just like that she keeps going back and forth between those two times. It's not a confusing time travel. I know that time travel can be quite confusing, but this one is not. And basically she figures out that there is a young boy. Every time she travels back in time, it is basically she saves this boy's life, this white boy's life, and it turns out that this white boy, she has to save his life because he is one of her distant relatives, basically. So distantly related to her, so if she doesn't save him, then she won't exist. But he is involved in slave trading. So I think this is just such an amazing exploration of race, and it's done so well, and I think it's like a must read. And it's not really like a heavy sci-fi, so if you are not that into sci-fi, I still think that you would enjoy this one. Number 12 is Malibu Rising. I don't have my copy because my friend just borrowed it, and by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this was amazing. I read this one quite recently. I read Evelyn Hugo earlier, and then I read Daisy Jones and the Six, which I did not like at all. Did not like Daisy Jones and the Six, so I was like, could go either way with Malibu Rising, but I loved it. It was just so fast-paced. It's basically just, it's got some overlap of characters from Evelyn Hugo, and I think also Daisy Jones and the Six, but it's basically about these the teenage and adult children of Mick Reaver, who is from Evelyn Hugo, and he is absent, and their mum, I think, was an alcoholic, and the older sister has to basically be the parent, and it basically flips back and forth. This is another one that flips back and forth in time, but only like a short time. So it's one time is the day of this massive party that they're having at their mansion, because they're kind of celebrity, they're models and surfers and things like that. So it flips between the day of the party leading up to the party, and it's like 8 a.m, 9 a.m, that kind of thing, and then back to the past. And it's just like the way that you can just see like the tension growing, and you're like, oh, like this like shit's gonna go down at this party. It's gonna be wild. There's like brother rivalry because of like romantic reasons. It's just, oh, if you are in a reading slump, this would be a great one to get you out of that reading slump. It's so fast paced and you cannot put it down. Number 11 is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I read a fair few classics this year. I've never really like been into classics, but I read a few of them this year because lots of them were free on Audible, including this one? I think this was. And this was just, it was just amazing. The vibes were immaculate. It was just, you know what this is about. I don't need to explain it, but in case you don't know what this is about, it is about Dorian Gray, who gets a portrait painted of him, and he basically makes this wish that he wishes that he could stay looking how he looks in the painting, and the painting could age instead of him, and then that's what ends up happening, and it ends up being a bit of a curse, and it has so many good themes, and just the subtle queerness of it is just like, it's amazing. Number 10 is To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers, and this is just a short novella, but this is amazing. If you like Becky Chambers, you'll 100% like this, and if you haven't read Becky Chambers, this would be a great one to start on if you're not sure if you'd be into sci-fi. this is a really good one to start on, and if you like this, you'll probably like her other books. It is basically about a future where Earth has kind of gone to shit, you know? The classic plot, so they're trying to find a new planet to survive on, basically, and so it goes through like different planets and this crew of people who are on a mission to find the best planet to settle on. But the cool thing about how they do it is, instead of terraforming the planet to suit their needs, they basically change themselves to fit the planet. So instead of like messing with the ecosystem, they are like, we're not going to do that, we have to change ourselves to suit the planet. So they're trying to find a suitable planet, and then they lose contact with Earth at some point, and they're not sure why. I've heard this described as a love letter to space exploration, and it also just talks about like the ethics of space exploration and just I guess exploration in general, because no matter what you do, you are intruding upon an ecosystem and probably having some effect on that ecosystem. So it explores the ethics of that, and it's like such a short book and it has so much in it. It's just amazing. Number 9 on this list is The Last House on Needless Street by Katrina Ward. This is a like psychological horror, and it's not very like heavy on the horror. So if you don't like horror, like, and you're not sure, I still think that this one is fine. It's just a psychological horror, so there's not really much body horror kind of stuff. It's not very gruesome or anything. But this is about a guy who lives in this house, the last house on Needless Street, and he is a bit weird, kind of like a recluse. I feel like I'm going to have to just read the synopsis of this one. I'm really bad at giving summaries, so it's described as a literary dark fiction, but I think it can also be seen as a horror. So this is told through multiple perspectives, and our main character lives in this boarded up house at the end of the street, so everyone's like, that's a bit weird, this guy's a bit weird. In a boarded up house on a dead-end street at the edge of the wild Washington woods lives a family of 3, a teenage girl who isn't allowed outside, not after last time, a man who drinks alone in front of his TV trying to ignore the gaps in his memory, and a house cat who loves napping and reading the Bible. An unspeakable secret binds them together, but when a new neighbour moves in next door, what is buried among the birch trees may come back to haunt them all. The Last House on Needless Street is an immersive and shocking journey that will keep you guessing until the last page. So yeah, this is amazing, and I don't want to say much more because I just feel like it'll spoil you, but it has a cat in it, and I feel like that's all that a lot of people need to know, is that there's a cat, and so there's a cat in the book, so you need to read it. Number 8 is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I mentioned this earlier, I've already had one Taylor Jenkins Reid book on this list, Malibu Rising. I like this one more, I think, but not by much. They're both amazing, but I think I like this one more. This is just amazing. So this is about Evelyn Hugo, who is basically a Hollywood celebrity, and she is quite secretive about her life, and she decides that she wants to tell her life story, and she picks this really like not well-known journalist to tell the story, and this journalist isn't sure why she's picked her, but she goes and like gets the story from Evelyn Hugo, and it's about the 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo. She tells the story of each husband, and also the story of her relationship with a woman called Cecilia. And I just don't know how to explain to you why this is so good. I think you just need to read it. The characters are just amazing. Taylor Jenkins Reid, I don't know how she does it, but she just writes amazing characters. They're all just so like unique and different, and it just feels like they're real people. Number 7 is also one that I have lent out, and that is Barn 8 by Deb Olfer. I've forgotten her last name, I'm sorry, but Barn 8, amazing. It is basically a chicken heist. Liberating 1 million chickens? It's either 1 million or it's like hundreds of thousands, but basically this is just a vegan dream, this book. So specifically an animal rights activist dream. That's why I loved it so much. So I don't think it'd be for everyone, but I still think it would be fun for like everyone. So this woman gets a job working as an inspector at an egg farm, and I think she's like a health inspector, so she's just checking food safety kind of stuff, I'm pretty sure. But she attends her first egg farm, I think it's her first one, and she sees a hen outside of the shed, just walking around like between the sheds. And she knows that that's a biosecurity hazard, so she can't put the hen back in because she's been exposed to outside, so she could bring diseases in. It's a very controlled biosecurity thing. So if she reports it, then the hen will just be slaughtered. So she instead takes the hen and finds a home for the hen, and then she keeps finding these hens in between the sheds, and she keeps doing the same thing, and then she decides she wants to do a massive chicken heist. Need I say more? Number 6 is The Pisces by Melissa Broder. This is a very hit or miss book, and it's might be the number 1 weirdest book I've ever read in my life. So I don't really know even how to describe this. This is a depressed woman book. I love a depressed woman book. And it's about a depressed woman who falls in love with a man that is a fish man. He is half man, half fish, and she finds him in the ocean. And that's the plot. It's so weird. And it's just like Melissa Broder has this way of writing like the weirdest shit. You're like, what the like, where did she come up with that? And then like the next page will be something so profound, and like that's what all these sticky notes are. All these sticky notes are just like profound bits of like, wow, she really said that. But some of them are all like, so this is on the very first page, about the dog that she's looking after, and he's doing a poo, and she's describing how the dog's doing a poo. And she says, I liked the warmth of his fat belly, the primal way he crouched when he took a shit. It felt so intimate, scooping his gigantic shits, the big hot bags of them. I thought, this is the proper use of my love. This is the man for me. This is the way. It's just, she's this woman. I just want to be her friend. Okay, we are in the top 5, and I think this is a pretty accurate top 5. So number 5 is The Troop by Nick Cutter. I read this also at the very beginning of the year, and I just don't think there could be a more horrifying horror book. This is like a proper horror. So like, this is a hard one to stomach. This is a very gross horror. So it's about this group of boys who go on, I don't know, kind of like a scout trip to an island. So it's kind of like Lord of the Flies kind of setup of the plot. And yeah, they go to this island, and then this man stumbles upon their campsite, this man who is like emaciated, really thin, obviously sick, and then he just dies. And then they all catch whatever he has, and it's just a like survival. It really is like quite, it must be inspired by Lord of the Flies. It's very much similar to that, but horror, and it's really disgusting. Big content warning for animal cruelty. I would say that's the most uncomfortable scene in this whole book, is the animal cruelty, and it's quite hard to stomach. That's the worst scene, I think. So that's a big content warning if you can't handle that kind of thing. But yeah, if you want a horror that is going to affect you and make you feel bad, this one. Number 4 is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, another classic. Yeah, this was just like perfect. I love this. I don't even know how to explain this. This is basically a semi-autobiographical novel by Sylvia Plath, and I'm sure you all know like what the story of Sylvia Plath. She was a poet and a author, and she ended up taking her life, and that was shortly after the publication of this book, I think. So obviously major trigger warnings in this one, like self-harm, suicide. It's not a happy book, but that's the kind of book that I like. So number 3 is Milkfed by Melissa Broder. Yeah, I think Melissa Broder is a new favorite author. So this one is also really fucking weird, but not quite as weird as the Pisces. So if you read the Pisces and you were like, that was good, but like maybe a little bit too weird, this one. So this one, I think this one just kind of hit a bit harder for me. Like, it was very relatable. It deals with an eating disorder. The main character has an eating disorder, so obviously major trigger warning for that. And basically it's a romance of her falling in love with a fat woman, and it's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's a depressed woman book again. We love the depressed woman books. The back says, a luscious, heartbreaking story of self-discovery through the relentless pursuit of desire. I couldn't get enough of this devastating and extremely sexy book. And then another one, Samantha Irby says, deeply hilarious and embarrassingly relatable. Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much what Melissa Broder's books are. You're like, oh shit, she really said that. She really put that in writing, and someone has to say it. And it also deals a lot with her relationship with her mother. Number 2 is one that is definitely on many people's lists, and that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is just amazing, whimsical, wholesome, bittersweet, just beautiful. I love it. It's about our main character who works at, this is kind of like I don't know if it's magical realism. It's not really. It's kind of more like low fantasy. It's just kind of, it's like our real world but with fantastical elements. And so our main character works at a company that monitors orphans, I think, or foster children, and he gets asked to go check on this one foster home that is full of weird, children with weird abilities, kind of. So he gets told that one of them's name is Lucy, who is Lucifer, and he is literally Satan. And he gets just told all this weird stuff, so he's like, oh my god, this place is going to be terrible. And then he gets there, and it's obviously just wonderful. Just wonderful, and they're beautiful. And we have a queer romance, and just the characters. The characters. You have to read this. If you haven't read it, just read it. Just do it. I actually read TJ Klune's other book, just talking about TJ Klune, and I didn't like it. Under the Whispering Door, didn't like it, so that's upsetting. But anyway, loved this one. And my number 1 favorite book of 2021 is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Oh man, this is top tier sci-fi. And this is one of those books where I can't really tell you why it's so good, because it's a spoiler, and the thing that I want to tell you about doesn't happen until like a third or even halfway through. Peanut, when the fuck did you go over there? What are you doing? Come back. Come back. Hang on. Oh, the people want to see your face, Peanut. There you go. Yes. So I think she's upset about me like swinging books around wildly. She's like, I'm only little and I could just be taken out by one of these books. Anyway, I'll hold them on this side then, Peanut. So something really bad has happened on Earth. Earth is going to die. And so they sent a crew of people out into space to try and find a solution to this problem. And the problem is that the sun is dying much quicker than it should be. So something is happening with the sun where it is basically just being eaten, the sun, and it's just getting colder, and Earth is heading into an ice age. So obviously humans will not be surviving the ice age. And the sun dying. So they're sent out to try and find a solution to this problem in space, because I suppose the sun is in space and there's other stars in space, so that's where you would find the solution to this old conundrum. And our main character Ryland wakes up from a deep sleep coma, and he's like, what the fuck, where am I, who am I, what's my name, what's going on? And then I think he works it out, and then he realizes that his crewmates have all died in deep sleep, and it's kind of like a space survival, and he's got to find this. He's the last ditch. They don't have time to send anyone else out. By the time he gets back, it'll be just in time, like, for humans to not die of an ice age or whatever. So yeah, just a little bit of pressure, but it's fine. It's all chill. And that's all I can tell you. I can't tell you the big thing that's amazing. But just read it. Just read it. Now I'm going to talk about my non-fiction favorites, and these aren't in any particular order. I will talk... they're not in it. I was gonna say, oh, maybe are these? No, I don't. There's no order. I would say one of them maybe stands out, but honestly, and that one is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. And this is a memoir about an abusive lesbian relationship, and it just is amazing. The writing is amazing. It's told kind of in like narrative tropes. So for example, there's a section that is a choose your own adventure. So it's like, go to this page, go to that page. And I'm trying to see if I can actually find it. Each chapter is Dream House as Memory Palace, Dream House as Destination, Dream House as Utopia. So each chapter is kind of like a different trope, I think. And it just explores the nuances of abuse specific to lesbian relationships and queer relationships in general. And it's amazing. This is like one of my top 5 books of all time. So this one is definitely a must read. Next is Ace by Angela Chen. What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex. So this book is basically all about the asexuality spectrum, which is not just asexual people, it's aromantic people, it's demisexual people. The author herself, I believe, is demisexual, and I also identify as demisexual. And even though I already knew that going into this book, I still learnt so much from this book. I just think this is such an informative book on sexuality and like a must read if you're interested in that. And you don't have to be on the asexual spectrum to get something out of this. It's just like so informative in so many different ways, and there will be something in here that you've never thought of before. Next is No Friend But the Mountains by Behrooz Boochani. And this is an Australian memoir about the author who was illegally, indefinitely imprisoned on Manus Island, the detention centre. So the way that this book came to exist is just insane. So the author smuggled a mobile phone into the detention centre. Yeah, so he smuggled a mobile phone in, and the way that he wrote this book is he wrote it in Farsi and sent it via WhatsApp to people who then translated it into English as he was writing it. And there's a note at the beginning on the nuances of just translating from Farsi to English and the things that are missed there, but it's like there's poems in here, and it's heartbreaking and so informative, but really like extremely upsetting. But I think this is a must read especially for Australians, because this is based in Australia specifically, but also for other countries, because, you know, refugee rights issues are an issue everywhere, unfortunately. Next is So Sad Today by Melissa Broder, the Queen. Yes, this is the 3rd Melissa Broder book on this list, and yes, that's all of the books I've read by her, and I don't think she has any others. New favourite author for sure. So this is a collection of essays just about various things like mental health, a lot about eating disorders, and also feminism topics, and it's just so like brutally honest. Just the things that she writes, and so this one is another one that's like, most of it is like really profound and like, wow, like hard hitting, but then some of it's just like, what the fuck, like what is she on about? And like some of it, you're like, wow, she really wrote that about her own sex life, put it in a book, said the book is non-fiction, that means it's true, every word in this is true, and my parents can read it if they want. She really did that, and I just think that's wild. That's wild. It's amazing. It's hilarious. It's just, it makes you think. I have many sticky notes. Lastly is Know My Name by Chanel Miller, which I don't have my physical copy of. I've lent that to a friend. And this is a memoir written by Chanel Miller, and she is the victim of Brock Turner, who sexually assaulted her at I think a college party. And she has no memory of the assault, so she explains kind of all that, how she woke up in the hospital and didn't remember how she got there, and yeah, she explains all of that, and then the book goes into the trial itself and just how harrowing it is to go through a trial like that. And this book I think came about mostly because of her victim impact statement, which she released online and it went viral. So the book itself has the victim impact statement, but you can also look it up online. And yeah, it's just, I myself have actually gone through a court trial, not to do with sexual assault at all, and nothing at all compared to this. It was actually just an activism related thing, but I could relate to just how harrowing a court case is. Obviously, it's not comparable at all to Chanel Miller's case, because I was actually the defendant in my case, whereas Chanel Miller would have been the prosecution in her case, so it's very different. But like, I very much related to just how, I don't know, just how difficult it is to go through any court case. Like, it's just exhausting in every way. Those are all of my favorite books for 2021. Let me know in the comments if any of these books are your favorites or if you plan on reading them. And that's everything. I will see you in my next video. Bye!